Hello and welcome back to another episode of Midwest Outcasts. We are back in action
Yep. Real quick, too.
real
It was
quick too,
back
like
to back.
back to back, but I feel like schedules around this time of year is crazy and it's only going to get crazier with the end of the year like right here, which is nuts. I feel like we just started 2023.
And now we're ending.
And now we're ending and we're starting a whole new year. So we want to do a little recap. So we've kind of been through 6 episodes already, which again is also crazy. And we kind of just wanted to kind of go over what we kind of went through and kind of where we envision this last kind of part of our inaugural season. So we've done a lot of travel talk. I guess I should say I've done a lot of travel talk. And we've thrown in a little bit of, our hometowns and really what made us who we are today and where we envisioned ourselves being as professionals in this field of work and where we really envisioned ourselves going. And tonight we're going to kind of dive into kind of a tough topic. It can be, especially around this time of year, but we're going to talk about grief and kind of what that looks like for people, what it can look like for people, I guess, because it affects everybody differently, of course. And really around this time of the year, the holidays, as we have so many holidays kind of back to back. And I think for me, especially, I lost my grandma over Thanksgiving, 2 days before Thanksgiving. And I wouldn't say it was a shock. She was 100 years old and lived a dang good life. She's been on hospice for the past year as well. So with hospice, we know that the end is obviously near at some point. And
Some
it
people could graduate
some
from
people can graduate.
hospice.
That did happen before, and I want to say I was in a way hopeful that maybe she would, but as the year progressed, she wasn't getting younger, poor lady, and she just had a lot of life, and just she was ready. She kept telling me she was ready. Every time we would go and visit her, she of course thought I was a doctor. We've shared that before. And she really just kept asking, when can I go? When can I go? Thinking me as the doctor could, take her away. And, it broke my heart. And so as sad as it was a blessing for sure. And she went very, very quick. She kind of just went in her sleep in a way. They went in to reposition her and check on her after they gave her meds, and she was gone. So it wasn't like she suffered for days on end or anything like that. She really wasn't taking a lot of, the preventative medications, things like that. I mean, she was comfortable. So I think for me, I really hit that grief stage, or the stages really kind of abruptly. Like, I think grief in a way is always with us, right? Like it can
Yeah.
stay with us from a very early on death that maybe we've witnessed, right? But I would say with this one it really hit me tough just because of our connection, right? And where we were at in our relationship, and for her to consider me her doctor, right? And she was 100. There was probably a little bit of some dementia or some confusion going on there, but I wasn't going to tell my 100-year-old doctor I wasn't a doctor, right? She
Your
knows I'm
grandma.
in the medical field. She knows I work for a hospital. She knows
Yeah.
I was in school for a long time. So I'm gonna let her think, I didn't perform any doctor duties. I didn't do any of that. We'll throw that disclaimer out there. Um, I was just there for her to listen, and just have that support. So yeah, it was a great thing really. And the hospice program is great. I mean, I will say it's great because I work for them, but even before working for them, it's such a blessing of a program that really outreaches so many rural areas here in Nebraska that I don't think the programs like that get enough credit. So,
Yeah, I agree. Whenever someone brings up hospice, I often talk highly of it. Um, just because they have a team. It's not just a social worker, it's not just a nurse, it's not just a religious coordinator. Like you have a
yeah.
huge team that supports you through this process.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we um have such, I mean, it's a big team for being in such a rural part too. And one thing that we really pride ourselves on is of being from small town Nebraska too. We cover a 9 county service area here in Nebraska, and that's huge, really.
Yeah.
And we have nurses that live in each of those counties, really. And so that kind of helps us with our marketing of we have hometown folks helping you. So people are familiar with people that are coming in their homes or the nursing homes that are familiar with those people. And I think that's what makes it so special too. And yeah, like you said, we have chaplains. We work with a local ministry that provides that service, which is wonderful. A medical director. I mean, so it's a wonderful thing, and we provide that bereavement services to those loved ones after the passing. One thing that I do as a social worker and provide that bereavement is as I started day one, I check in with those families right away. I provide those check-ins while their loved one is still with us because I think it's so important to begin that process to make it a little bit maybe easier for them. I mean, the loss is still gonna be tough, right? But I think just having those conversations early on is super helpful. And it's one thing that helped me too. Um, I think just going through the training and going through the work of it, I think it's really helped me as well. So I think what would be helpful is to kind of start with the stages of grief and kind of discuss through those um, and kind of see where this discussion takes us.
Yes. Yeah. And the biggest thing that I've learned through myself going to therapy is that the stages of grief don't go in a typical order.
Right.
They just randomly happen at times. So you might be thinking that you're done with anger, but you're not. Like it just depends on like the triggers that might pop up, the things that may come up, like
Right.
um which is kind of crazy. I never thought of me having triggers until I went to therapy, but it's
Mhm.
just, that song on the radio that comes on, that's considered a trigger, to you that sparks an emotion reaction to it. So,
Right. Yeah. So anger is definitely one of the stages. I think that sometimes people can have anger surrounding the death, right? Of why did this happen? Why did this have to happen right now over the holidays, right? That kind of was one thing that I was kind of thinking about with my grandma is why did this have to happen this week of all weeks of a busy holiday week, right? Then I think about it was we can't control that. We can't control when the death's gonna happen, right? I see that all the time in my work of I want to pass away right now. Like, we can't help that. Only God can control that, right? And can bring our loved ones, home to him and let them, cross that path. And I think that's one thing that is tough for people. And so anger is a tough one sometimes to even get past of that. And like you said, something that has helped you through therapy is recognizing that and understanding that there's going to be triggers that are going to come along, whether it's a song on the radio or you drive by their house, right? If they lived in the same areas as you, or you wear their favorite color, for the day, or any little thing like that can be a trigger, right? So I think that's a really
yeah.
big stage that is hard to get through for sure.
Now, just real quick, I kind of want to, because it came to my mind,
Yes.
especially when you brought up God and stuff
Yes.
like that. Have you worked in hospice with anyone that didn't have that belief in God?
Right, right. So trying to think.
Sorry,
I've
we're just
I
getting off topic just a little bit, but I'm just
Right.
kind of
I
curious
mean,
of like how that
that's a
works in
normal
hospice.
thing for us, right? I think that's a social worker thing. So I wouldn't say like not necessarily in hospice, but I've worked with clients in therapy that I've had that belief, you know, and not that I like I'm not a social worker or therapist that pride myself like on spiritual care. Like definitely have the beliefs and stuff, but that's not my main focus. And it's one thing that religion is a tough topic sometimes for discussion for
Yeah.
people. And that's what makes sometimes it difficult for me to even bring it up. Like when I'm doing my assessments of, do you have a religious preference? Because it can spark a big conversation for people. And for me, like I'm not one for confrontation. And like I definitely will put myself in a battle if I need to, right? Like with my family, especially like 100%, I'm gonna win that battle with my family. You can ask any of my siblings, they will try their best, but I'm gonna win. I and but professionally, I never put myself in that battle because number one, I don't think it's professional. Number
Right.
two,
It's
we're
not
not,
about us.
yeah, it's not about us. It's about helping them. And so I want to say therapeutically, I've had clients like that, and you simply just keep it as a note of if a religion conversation comes up, just know that the conversation is probably not going to go anywhere and you don't want to spark up any other conflicts. Now moving to hospice, like I said, I don't think I've had a client that has had, no spiritual beliefs like that. But our chaplains are very good about that conversation of really respecting that because sometimes I feel like it would be tough, of
Mhm.
being a chaplain. But I've had those conversations with our chaplain providers of what does that look like, right? What does that look like for you as someone who is a believer, right? And they simply pray, right? They pray for them still because they can't pray for them to have a belief. They can't pray that the belief's all of a sudden going to come, right? But I think
Yeah.
just having that support, and I think for me as social worker, like you still want to support them the best you can, even if you don't agree with them, which
Right.
sometimes it's tough.
Yeah. I also believe that people don't know what else to say besides I'm praying for you,
Right.
I'm gonna kind of be throw out some personal things on my end. Like the primary reason I went to therapy last year was because of my battle of infertility, and I still harbor anger towards God. Um, so I'm still going through grief on my own. So um, I know one of my biggest triggers is when people say like I'm praying for you and like throw out religious things towards me. um I don't I appreciate it when they text me and not really say it to me, just because text I can have a better reaction, that I don't feel like I would offend them in any way, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So like going through my own grief, because I'm still grieving,
Absolutely.
um is that whenever like with the triggers and stuff and like going through this process, I just kind of figured that people don't know what to say. And so they
Mhm.
often jump to what everyone else says is I'm thinking of you, I'm praying for you,
Mhm.
those kind of things, which sure, to me, it's not very helpful,
Mhm.
but it's their way of trying
It's a
and
it's a
saying that
it's a
I'm there
gest
for you.
right. It's a gesture that they feel like is appropriate, right? And you think about it, like it's what everybody turns to in every situation, right? So do you feel like it's just a common thing that you're getting now is if something comes up, that's the response you're gonna get?
Yes,
Mhm.
especially from family.
Mhm.
I've recently, like Jeremy and I have kept it like with our family more so of like the journey and stuff.
100%.
And maybe one day I'll be able to get to that point of sharing it on here, but right now I'm just not at a good spot.
Absolutely.
Um, but when I share something like if I share a TikTok on my Snapchat, let's say, for example, because sometimes, and especially recent, if I see like a TikTok that resonate with me, and part of my grieving, I'll share it on Snapchat, and
Mhm.
people will send like a heart, or people will send like, I'm still thinking about you. I'm still praying for you. That kind of stuff, which is like, okay, thank you.
Right. Right. But I think it's probably tough in both ways, right? It's probably tough for people to how do they respond to that? They want to be respectful, right? But for you, it's like it's just hard to get the support either way, right? Because I am in similar I'll sometimes post things on Snapchat that resonate with me too. Almost in a way like I want a response, right? I want people to see what I'm going through,
Hmm.
but I'm also like I look for certain responses. Like I don't want to look for the similar things like, or you'll find your happily ever after. Like I get that. Like that's kind of what the video was portraying with, but like there's other things that people can share for support, right? I think it's easier to say I'm thinking about you or you'll find it one day. Like
Yeah.
yes, I know that. I know that, right? But there's still that anger inside of, well, when's it gonna happen then? You keep
Yeah.
praying for me, you keep saying you're thinking about me, but when's it gonna happen? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can keep saying it, you can keep saying it, but and I think that's where my anger comes from, and it sounds like it can relate for you too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So what about the bargaining stage? That's another stage that I feel like is tough for a lot of people. And the easiest way for me to kind of share the meaning of that is with bargaining is why did it have to happen to them? Why couldn't it have happened to me? Right. And I think that's what we can talk about next for your journey too. I mean, why did this have to happen to my grandma during Thanksgiving? Right? Why couldn't it have happened after the new year? Right? But we don't have that choice, right? And I think that's the next stage that can really affect a lot of people is why did they have to have cancer, right? Why did they have to have, you know, a heart attack, right? Why couldn't they have just died in their sleep, right? All of those different things, but again, we don't get to make those choices, and I think for me, just working in this field, I think has helped me tremendously of a better understanding of it, of why it happens the way it does, right? Because really, death is so unique, right? And it's very hard sometimes to put it into perspective, but really to me, like I've only witnessed someone passing, like I've held someone's hand while they passed before. And in a way like it really changes you. I think it's like you feel the let up in a way. And it's something that I don't know if I could ever do again, honestly. Like but I mean it wasn't a loved one either. It was when I worked at the nursing home. So I think it would change if it was a loved one maybe, but I think putting yourself in that, I think it really changed me of why did this have to happen when their family wasn't here, right?
yeah.
Why didn't this happen when they could have had more support? But again, we can't choose all of that. It's not in our power. It's not in our wheelhouse. People, I think sometimes I can be a miracle worker because I'm a social worker. I can do anything. You
For
can't
other people,
for
just
other
not for
people,
ourselves.
not for ourselves. Absolutely not. But that's tough. So what is your take on bargaining? Where do you feel like bargaining can affect you or people?
I don't know. I feel like, bargaining, in my opinion, though, a lot of people don't get really stuck on.
Mhm.
I feel like people get more stuck on the anger and the depression stage.
Right.
Um, but I do remember, so my dad passed away. Gosh, it's been almost 12 years at this point from cancer. So I was still in my undergrad at UNK when he passed away from
Right.
cancer. So I just kind of remember like basically praying to God one day. This was like my mom and I went to church. It was so random. And I just sat there and I'm like, God, you either need to take away his pain and just let the suffering stop, or you need to find a cure for this cancer. And
Absolutely.
literally like a week later he was gone after that. So I do like remember that. And like with my time with my dad, I felt like I was okay with his passing because of the times that I took him to chemo.
Right.
Because I did a lot of that. I took him to chemo treatment so that my mom could work, so she didn't have to take off.
Mhm.
And so I luckily was able to arrange my class schedule and my part-time job schedule at that time when I was going to Northeast to be able to take him to chemo. So
Yeah. And just for you to have that time with him too, you know,
yeah,
or for you to go through that time, with God, right? Shows that it can work for people, right? If where you when you turn to him and where you see the support going at that time, I mean, definitely can help, right? But again, it affects people differently, right?
mm.
Um, and I
And
think
it's weird to think about because like then, I
absolutely
prayed and like that happened, and now it's like
you're
no.
getting it's almost like you're getting punished,
Yeah, at
right?
this point, but
It's tough for sure. And it's again the bargaining of I was there for you then, right? You supported me then. Why aren't you supporting me now? Right?
yeah.
Wow. What about the denial stage? Because that's I feel like a stage that I'm still in right now with the loss of my grandma is she really gone? Right? Like, am I just not going to see her because I'm just busy with work? That was always an excuse before was I'll get there when I can. I'm just so busy with work.
Yeah.
Right? And I know like the next time I go there for the like to the nursing home there, I mean it'll hit me. I've done it before, I think, and it was so new, like so recent that I didn't really even think about it. Like I'm not here to see her, I'm here to see somebody else, or I'm here for a meeting, I'm not here to see her, you know? So that's tough sometimes, I think, too, of going back to the anger piece too. So that's what makes the stages of grief so connected is you can be in a way in all of them at once, and that can really can really mess with you, right?
Right. But we also think like it goes in order. Like first you have denial, then it goes to anger, depression, that kind of stuff. But that's not how it works. That's not how
Right.
life works, unfortunately. I wish
Mhm.
I wish it
Right.
did, but
Right. Be
it's
so
just
nice.
yeah. I think also like denial also is not accepting your emotions too, and like pushing them down and stuffing them in a sense. I think that's part of it too, because you don't want to face it, which is fair. No one likes to face those quote unquote negative emotions of being
Oh no,
sad and
absolutely not.
angry, jealous, that kind of stuff.
For sure. For sure. So the depression stage, like you mentioned, that is one I think is one that resonates with a lot of people too, because we already see this time of year, like the seasonal depression that comes around. And so I think that can kind of go hand to hand with grief too. Is the holidays are already tough on somebody, but then you can have this seasonal depression where now it's winter, we can't be outside, doing the barbecues and the fire pits and stuff. I mean, you probably could still do a fire pit now if you wanted to, but it might still be a little chilly. But the things that you did in the summer, right, in the fall, and you can't be outside past 3 p.m. It feels like because it's gonna be dark. So you see all those things that change, and we're having to be inside more. And depending on your house, like maybe if you lived in a mansion or something, we had more space to do things. But if you live in an apartment or you live in a smaller house, there's only so much you can do, right? There's only so
Yeah.
much space you can be in, right? Like I'm in my kitchen right now recording this podcast with you, right? where am I going to go after this? Well, most likely to the living room, right? And then it's going to be time for bed because I feel like I'm 90. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do, right?
Hmm.
And it puts you in I want to say like a funk, right? I feel like I always kind of say it's like the winter blues too, because you maybe aren't experiencing every symptom of depression, right? There's a lot, but you kind of just are in that funk, right? The winter blues of I don't want to do anything today. I'm just gonna stay in bed and just veg. My mom loves that word, veg. I'm just gonna do what I please and we'll see what happens. Sometimes those days work. Days and days it happens. That's when we gotta figure it out. That's not what we want. Um
I do have like a great example, and I wish like, darn you, HIPAA, but a patient that I work with, he isn't from Nebraska. He's
okay.
from a different state, and like he did a crime in Nebraska that got him to he's like basically stuck at this point.
Okay.
And we had to do like an involuntary medication through the courts. Someday maybe I'll explain all this stuff to you guys. But anyways, so the courts approved the involuntary meds because he was refusing and he needed it. And literally a week or so after the first medication administration, he like turned into a completely different person, and he began to like realize what he did, realize where he's at,
Wow.
and is in complete depression mode because he's like, Caitlin, I've lost my trucking company. My family is in a different state. I may never be able to see them again. I may never be able to leave Nebraska. And it's like he started crying, and he is just like a Debbie Downer at this point because it's been a couple months and he still is kind of in that way.
Wow.
And it's like, well, what are you doing about it? Like, sure, you can take medications, but when you are offered to go outside to yard, are you taking that advantage?
Mm-hmm.
And he said no. And he said, like, the best ways for him to cope is to lay down in bed, which is not a good coping skill. It's okay to take that time out for yourself, but if it's a daily thing, that's not okay. You need to realize, like, do I need to seek some help? Do I need to talk to my doctor? So it's just crazy to see it like in front of you, the stages of grief. And I straight up told him, I'm like, you're grieving right now. He's
Mm-hmm.
like, what do you mean? I'm like, you are grieving the life that you had and you lost it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you will never be able to return to that life again because of the actions that caused you to be here.
That's such a great way to put it because grief is not all about a loss of a physical person, right? It can be a job, a house, a car, a dog, an animal, right? I mean, it could be so much other things. And I think growing up, I always just thought that you only could grieve and be sad if someone passed away. Like your emotions as a kid are all over the place, right? Like not
Right.
you're not 100% for sure. But I think now, like where I'm at professionally, but also like I'm older, I want to say I'm more mature than I was. You know that grief can happen in different areas. And so that's so fascinating that you witnessed that of you're grieving the life that you previously had because of the actions that you went through, right? And you displayed. Because that's so important, and you can think about on our own lives of what we did as kids and in college and things like that. And maybe we've been through things that's like, wow, like no wonder things happen the way they did, right? The
Yeah.
actions that we exhibit and display, right, they're gonna affect us for sure.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And you often people don't realize, and I get it, like you said, even as adults, people think that grief is just when something dies, passes away.
Mm-hmm.
But really, every choice that you make can cause you to grieve a part of your life that has changed.
Right.
like the friends that you once had. That's grieving right there, is like
Yeah.
a friendship that you've lost.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
you have to go
Yeah.
through that grief to be able to move forward.
Oh yeah. And I've done that. I've done that plenty of times with friends, of, you know, almost like respecting my piece of giving up their friendship, and then you're gonna grieve. I feel like you grieve the memories, right? You grieve
Yeah.
the life you had with that friend, even if they're still here, right? And I can see them on the streets, and it's just like we never knew each other, right? And to me, like that could be sad, right? That could put me in the depression stage right there of the saddest, but it doesn't, right? I've accepted, right? This last stage, I've accepted that that friendship was no longer necessary for me and where my life was back then and where I'm at now in my life, right? I'm not going to say it would never be where we wouldn't be friends again in the future because you can never say never, right? But
Right.
where I'm at now, like I'm content, right? And so acceptance is the last stage, and it's where you've accepted the loss, right? You've accepted that it's happened. They're no longer here with us, or what you were grieving is no longer in our life, in your life, I should say, our life. Um, and you've accepted that, and you're ready to move on for the time being. And the time being, I say that because it can come back up, right? Grief
Those
just doesn't.
triggers.
Yeah, there's the triggers, right? Because one trigger for me in that friendship is we had some music that we would always listen to, and if I hear those songs on the radio, or they're on playlists on my phone, which partially my own fault, sometimes they come up and I'm like, takes you right back to those times together.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't make me sad anymore, but back then, oh, 100%. I'm such a super emotional dude. I can cry very easily, like if I need to. I mean, not on command. I'm not an actor by all means, but I mean, I can recall like the times I would get emotional over it. Now it doesn't bother me because I mean, I'm one that can fast forward through songs, no problem. Doesn't bother. But triggers, those are huge, right?
Yes.
And I get a trigger now with my grandma. Not that it's big, but like when she moved to the nursing home, took her porch swing that she always sat on in the spring. And she would always lay down, and I always thought that she had went to heaven right then. That she would lay down and just look like she was slumped over, and I'd always have to walk over there because she lived in the same apartment complex as me. And she like, "I'm just resting, and I'm like, okay. And now like it's at my house, and so every time like I look outside, like I just can see her just lounging away, and it brings back the happy memories, right? It doesn't bring back the denial, the anger, any of that right now, which I mean it's still pretty recent, so we'll see what happens, but the memories, right? Let the memories come up, the good memories, the happy memories, what made the relationship, that part of your life so special to you.
Yeah. And kind of going on like about what you were saying about how you cry and you're emotional.
Mhm.
I believe what I've learned through like going through therapy and like recently especially is I'm gonna throw out a DBT term, but to ride the wave of emotion. So what I've learned is that when something traumatic happens, with trauma like can be very, everyone has their own traumatic events, whether that could be like seeing someone die or even like just receiving bad news could be traumatic.
Mhm.
So whenever I go through that, I need to release, which for me, I need to have a good cry and release that and ride that wave of emotion
Mhm.
and be able to go through that. Because otherwise, if I don't, I'm just gonna stuff it, and it's just gonna get worse if I don't go through it.
Mhm.
And I never really understood of you need to go through it until like more recently where I'm like, I need to cry to release this and I need to feel this emotion, even though I don't want to. Like,
Yeah.
no, like I said before, no one wants to feel those negative emotions. No one wants to feel sad. No one wants to be mad. No one wants to be jealous, but you need to recognize that and you need to, for yourself, you need
Right.
to go through it.
Yeah. It's one thing too, like when I think of crying and talking through with clients and things like that is I always like to say, and I don't know if this is I don't know like if everybody does this or if it's just something that I just had in my mind, but like when we cry and the tears are coming down, it's like every little emotion is getting out of your body, out of your system, right? So the anger is coming out, right? The sadness is coming out, or you can even put it into different words, right? Or this is the loss coming out, or anything like that. It's once you cry it out, it's out of your system, and it can come back, right? But like just getting it out, right? And crying can be the other way. Sometimes people scream. I've done that
Yeah.
before. Like, just going screaming into a pillow, or you can just literally scream out loud. Like I haven't done that in a while because I
Punch
don't
your pillow.
right. I don't want my neighbors to think I mean, they probably already think I'm crazy, but way worse. I also, for me, like I always like just to go out like for a drive. And sometimes people think like that is not what you should do when you're like not manic, but like upset or sad. Like you should not be. But like I do, right? And I just turn on some music and I just debrief for myself, right? And I think that helps for me too. Like I know you commute to work too, but like that kind of helps me too of having a commute. Like mine's only like 15 minutes, like it's not bad, but it just gives me that time for myself to debrief for the day, debrief for what I went through in the day, right? Some days are way difficult, right? Um, and it truly helps. Sometimes it's helpful, like just to talk to somebody else, like somebody you haven't talked to in a while, right? Um, and or just reaching out to someone you talk to daily, right? Your therapist, right? Super important. And it just puts it all into perspective of how grief can be so tough, but in a way can be so helpful too for you to go through all this and really find yourself, right? You might find yourself in a different way of this really changed me, right? This loss, whatever it was, whatever it could be, has changed me, right? Your patient you mentioned, right? He's a new person really because he's recognized that this loss he's no longer be able to do that because of the actions that he displayed, right? I'm no longer going to have my grandma with me on this earth with me at the same time, but I think of all the memories that we had together, what we used to do together. I really think of the last like 5 years we had together when Dr. Joey was alive and well, and he's
And
retired.
thriving as a doctor.
He's retired now. I officially hit the retirement. So,
That's good.
yes. And I really think about all the memories we had then, all the conversations, all the silly nonsense comments she made. Like it really changed my outlook on life and really found that new passion for me in social work and in this is why I do what I do. This is why I love working with older adults. I don't mind working with younger people. I won't say I don't like younger people. Kids, I'm not going to work with kids probably, but younger people I can handle, but I love the oldies. They're where I thrive. I I can just put me in a room with older adults and I can handle it for the most part, we'll say. But it's you find that passion and that doesn't happen for everybody again, right? I'm not saying you have to lose something to find yourself again, but it can happen, right?
Yeah.
Totally can.
Yeah. Um, before we move further, I did want to just bring up that picture that I sent with you
No,
about growing around grief.
yes.
How, you know, people say with time it gets easier. It does, but the reason being is because we're growing around that grief. That grief isn't disappearing. It's not going away. It's
Mhm.
because most of the time we're growing around it, in a
Right.
sense.
Well, that's what I always like to say too to clients is sometimes we have to grow through what we go through, right? And grief is a prime example of that, really.
Yeah. So it doesn't slowly get smaller. We just humans adapt and we grow basically around it.
Mhm.
And that's why you need to really just acknowledge the grief and work through it.
Right. And I really like how the picture really states like really in reality, right? Because our life is reality, right? That grief is going to stay with us, right? And it's going to be the same size, right? It's going to be this hole, maybe this empty hole in your heart, right? We'll say that that hole is going to stay the same size no matter what, but slowly our life around it, our heart's going to grow bigger around it. It's going to grow bigger because we've worked on ourselves. We've worked past it, right? But the hole is always going to be there. The grief's going to be there, right? We got to work on ourselves and work hard of getting to the point of accepting, right? And learning that it's going to be okay, right? It might not ever be the same like it once was, right? Like, you know, but life will go on, right? You have to figure out a way to get it to where it's a comfortable way for you to go, to go on.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to also add that like when in a situation where it's you're going through grief, not necessarily because you lost someone because
Right.
they passed away, but and like just circumstantial reasons that you're going through grief, just kind of keep in mind that your life is going to look different than what you wanted it to be. And it's okay. However, getting to the acceptance part is going to be the hardest struggle that you will have. Like feeling the emotions of sadness, anger is one thing, but
Mhm.
in my opinion, and especially with like my journey, I feel like those are easy
Right.
compared to finally accepting it.
Well, and that's why I think really this stages of grief, why acceptance is the last one, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it's the last one for a reason. You have to accept before you can move past the grief for a little bit, right? Again, it doesn't go away, right? Those stages are going to be there. With the holidays coming up, or we're in the really thick of holiday season, you might pop into one of those stages again, right? Um, I think for me, especially, I think the holidays are going to be tough for a while because, my grandma passed right around Thanksgiving, 2 days before. So Thanksgiving's probably going to be tough for a while. Doesn't mean I'm going to go straight back into the anger and the bargaining. I mean, I might. I don't know what next year will bring, right? Stay tuned and find out. But, you know, um, but grief, it's going to be with us, right? But gotta grow what you go through. And I'm going to grow from this loss for sure. Our relationship, it changed me as a human for sure. And I don't want to just stop what I'm doing and just accept it now. I want to continue accepting it and continue growing as a professional and where I see myself because that's what she wanted. She knew I was busy. She asked me all the time, "How are your clients, right? How are you doing at work? You're probably so busy." She knew. She knew that I thrive on being busy, which is completely not true. I mean, I feel like I do well with what I do, but I definitely am busy a lot of the time. And she knew all of that, right? She knew everything, right? And that's what changed me is our relationship where it was and you know I want to make her proud, right? I know I already did, right? I just want to continue making my mark on this world, like we all do, right? We Not that we all want to leave a legacy, but I want to be remembered for what I do in life, not what I didn't do, right?
Yeah.
I just want to live life to the absolute fullest, and that's where I thrive in my social work life. Is That's what I want to do for my clients. I'm going to get them to thriving, right? It might take me 3 months to get them there. It might take me 3 years. It might take me 30 years. I don't know. I mean, I hope I don't have the same client for 30 years, but maybe. But I mean, I have a client right now. I started seeing them in August, and they're going to discharge at the end of the month, and they're doing so well. And that makes me feel so good that we were able to come in and change things around and be done in 3 months. I've had a client for 2 years that um they're finally at that point of kind of slowing things down. It it's all different, right? And you see that all the time too, in the hospital setting, probably a little bit differently, but you know you're gonna have certain clients for a longer time than some, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you
It
know that
depends.
early
Like
on too.
a lot of it's medication management at the end of the day, but yeah.
And that's the
um
same thing too.
yeah. Before we wrap things up, I do want to kind of talk about the triggers a little bit and what
I love that.
people can do kind of to set healthy boundaries during this holiday month because I mean, families, we love them, but families are tough sometimes to get along with, right? And so like I think the biggest thing for me is just to figure out what your triggers are, figure out what's going to if someone says, for me, for example, just bringing up like especially with my family because they know, like my family and my husband's family, like they know, like I don't want to hear about we're praying for you, that kind of stuff. And so for me is if I hear that, for me, I will either say thank you or, right now I don't want to talk about it. So it's just setting those healthy boundaries and it's okay. It's honestly okay. I know it's one of the hardest things to do, but it's okay to say no and to
Tell
be
me,
like,
tell me about
no, I
it.
don't want to talk about it right now. It is so uncomfortable to do that with your family or
It
even your close friends that you consider family
is.
because those boundaries are not normal. Like they're just not, it's awkward.
Right. And the sooner you put the boundary in place, the easier it'll be for your family and friends too, I think. But the hardest part is setting that boundary first. And I am the worst at setting personal boundaries for myself. And even professional boundaries. Like I have a hard time just saying no with lots of different things.
Yeah.
And you can ask my family friends, they're like, are you ever just gonna slow down? I don't know, not right now, but maybe sometime. But I'm very good at helping clients put boundaries in place. And that's what really gets
Yeah.
me all the time is so easy to help somebody else out, but yourself, absolutely not. And I think for me too, there's certain topics that I can't discuss with family and friends. Like if they bring something up, and I think one thing is like about like my relationships. I think that is tough because I'm very private about my relationship and I'm not in a relationship, I will share that. But I'm private enough about it that when that time does come, and I've shared this in earlier episodes, I'm not one that's gonna pronounce it all of a sudden. Like I'm gonna let it settle with myself, right? Because it's something that is very meaningful and something that I want for me, right? This is my relationship. This isn't everybody else's relationship, right? But one thing that gets me too is when you go to the holidays, "Oh, when are you gonna get married? When do you have a partner, right? You need to have kids, all of this. Like we're not having that discussion because I'm number one, I'm too busy for that right now. That's what I always say. That's my excuse. But again, like in a way for you, I can relate. It's hurtful, right? Of how can we not have this, right? And in a way, I think I do it to myself because sometimes I post things on Snapchat of I'm never gonna find anybody, or all my friends are getting married, and then there's me. So then it's like I'm feeling the fire in a way, and I recognize,
Are you though?
see, and that's what gets me because I thought about that last week of Joey, you're fueling the fire. You don't want the attention about your relationship, but you keep posting it. But then, you
But
know,
why can't you do it?
that's what I mean. That's what gets me, and it's something I'm still processing today. Is why do you want to post it, but you don't want the attention of people asking you.
But why can't you? So in situations like this, I always think about like, what would I tell a client?
Mm,
So, like in this situation, what would you tell a client? Like, I kind of look at it as it's your social media. You can post whatever the fuck you want to post at the end
mhm.
of the day because it's yours. And I mean, people still don't need to make comments. People don't need to like ask questions and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
they're still choosing to do so.
right. And I think that my close family and friends are definitely like very good about it. Like, and if I bring it up, I know that there's gonna be some conversation about it then.
Right.
Like,
But you kind of invite it. Like if it's in
right,
conversation, you're inviting it, which
right.
I think that's fine. And if there's a certain point where you feel uncomfortable or don't want to continue, that's when put
Mhm.
that boundary in.
Yeah. And I think the conversation about like starting a family, I think kind of starts with my grandma. I mean, she's in her 70s. I get it. She wants grandchildren, right? I mean, and I mean, great grandchildren, I should say. And two of my cousins are expecting. So she's going to have great grandchildren. So I think in a way that's like saved me, but also it almost puts pressure on me because I'm the oldest. You think about like, I should have been the first one married and have kids by now. You kind of have that like kind of perception. But I know that in a lot of families, that's not how it works, but you just kind of just see that's kind of how the dynamic the role it should be, right? Um, and so in a way, I did have that pressure for a while, but now that I know that they're expecting, it kind of took that pressure off. Like, all right, you can take a step back. But I also know that starting a family for me is going to be super tough, right? So I know that no matter when that time is going to be, I mean, it's not going to be an easy journey for sure. And
Right. And
so,
it's gonna look different too.
so different. And first off, as a single dude, it's even worse. And so I know that I probably am gonna have to wait until I am in a relationship, most likely married down the road. I mean, I know it could happen if I'm single, but I just know how it's gonna be. And so I've taken that pressure off. And I mean, I want to give my cousins credit. I think they definitely helped with that. Because my grandma hasn't asked. And I don't want to put her on blast. I mean, I don't know if she listens. Hey Graham, if you are listening. But it's tough, right? And so in a way, yeah, I definitely think I fuel the fire a little bit, but I've taken that step back of, it is my social media. I'll post what I want, but I also need to be cognizant of what others will post too, because in a way it's their social media too. Like I don't post a lot on like Facebook about it.
Mhm.
Like I don't even have my relationship status public, I don't think. I'm gonna check. But because and again, like when that time comes, I could honestly see myself dating somebody for set amount of time and literally go off and get married and not like tell anybody and do it. Like I do like want to have family and friends there, but I also feel like I could go off and get married and then come back and do like a small thing. Like I definitely
Yeah.
see that. My family will be livid. I already know it, but again, it's not their life. And that's what makes it tough, right? And it's a way you're going to be grieving that part of your life, so you need to do it in a way that you can accept it and move on. So tough. So
Yeah.
triggers are that's a trigger for me right there. And even seeing like my friends get married and have kids, at first it was a huge, I wouldn't say a huge trigger, but it was tough. Like it was super tough. I'm like, I don't know if I can even go to one of their weddings, right? But I'm like, no, like stop being a baby and do it because, you know, um and that was like my first like close friend. Now, like when my like best friend got married, um I don't know, she's probably gonna kill me for not remembering. I mean, I know her day, but it's been like I'd say like maybe close to 5 years. Um and I mean that was something that I knew like I had to be there, right? One thing though that was tough was like she wanted me to, she like we had talked about like me being like in the wedding, like being part of the wedding party. And it was something that was tough for me because I knew I would most likely have to walk down with a dude. And I maybe I wouldn't have, we could have worked it out, but it was something I didn't want to do. Like it's something that I already felt judged in a way.
Yeah.
And it was something like I don't know how the other dude would feel like or make it a big deal, right? So it was something that I was like, I'm gonna take a step back. You know, I love you to, you know, to death, but can we work something else out? And we did. Like I was a personal attendant and I called myself the HBIC head bitch in charge. And I mean, I felt like it was the best decision for me, and I know, um you know, and I respect that if it was hurtful for her, and we've talked about it, but I felt like this is where I wanted to be for her that day,
Yeah.
and I still was was part of the wedding. I still did, you know, the duties that you know she wanted me to do and things like that. And now with her family, she has two kiddos. I mean, it's wonderful. Like I love spending time with them, and I wouldn't change my decision and our friendship. I mean, we're super close. Now moving on to like my wedding, like I don't expect her to like say yes to be in my wedding. I know she probably will because that's just who she is, but I don't expect her. Like if I say, "Hey, I'm gonna get married in 2 years, blah blah blah. Like, do you want to be in my wedding?" Like, I don't expect her to be like, "Yes, of course." You know, and again, like I think just because if I said no to being her wedding, she has every right to say no to being mine. But
Yeah.
again, so that's a trigger to me sometimes, is if I say no to something, I have to respect the mutual decision.
Yeah.
So what a discussion. This was a good one.
It was. And it was a little heavy at times, but
It was.
it was still good. That's kind of grief though. At
Yes,
times it's going to be heavy.
it is.
You gotta go through it though.
Yeah. Grow what you go through. So
Yes.
we hope that this discussion was helpful and meaningful to you all. This is a tough time of year for everybody, no matter if you've had a recent loss or not. And just know that help is out there 100%. So know that you don't have to struggle alone, that there are plenty of resources out there, and we are here to support you. So please reach out with any questions. And as always, we will see you soon, next month, 2024.
Holy smokes.
Holy smokes. Yeah, we have some fun next couple episodes coming up. And then it's gonna be time to wrap up season one. Season one.
Yes.
I feel like we deserve like an inaugural award for just putting ourselves out here like
Sticking it.
this,
Yeah. Sticking
and,
with it.
and just doing the damn thing. So
Yes.
we hope this was a helpful discussion. And
Before we end,
yes,
though, there were some people that commented on
yes.
our
I didn't
last
I didn't really follow through. So
episode of
are we
where they
are we gonna give
live.
them a shout out?
Well, I mean, we can if we want to, but I was just gonna be like, thank you
Oh,
for
yes.
posting because I appreciate it. It's kind of, to be honest, it makes me feel sad when we post a question and no one answers, or,
Yeah, it
you
does.
guys are the true
It
listeners.
really, I'm not crying, but I am crying. No, we know life is hectic, but we love the extra engagement. So those that did comment and say where you live and how big your towns are, you are the real MVPs this past episode, and we appreciate you. And if we ever hit the big time, we'll remember you.
Yes, for commenting on our episodes.
Yes, on our inaugural season, you will be. We'll put your name on our billboard or something.
Yes, special shout outs
Special
to
shout
these
out.
people.
Love it. All right, you guys all have a great holiday and into your 2023. Do something special for you. Spend the next time with your loved ones, and
Yes. Give yourself grace during this time. Just it's okay to feel certain ways. It's okay to feel sad, mad, pissed off at the world. Give yourself grace
Mhm.
and just forgive yourself because we're
Right.
all human at the end of the day. We all have feelings. They're
Mhm.
shitty sometimes, but you'll get through this.
Well, do something for you, and just enjoy this time that you have with your loved ones. So we will see you in 2024, and we can't wait to share what's next. Bye.
Bye.